Shot glass of recovery, working the 12 steps, listen to fellows speak. You can listen in wherever you may be. It's a shot glass of recovery.
Hello and welcome to the 53rd episode of the Big Book Study on A Shot Glass of Recovery. My name is Lisa. I'm your host of A Shot Glass of Recovery and really happy to continue to be presenting the Big Book Study, although we are nearing a close. And I think what we are going to do next is the 12 and 12. And I'm not sure if it's going to continue on the rotating schedule of Tuesday at 10 a.m., Wednesday at 6 p.m., and Saturday at 5 p.m., because I think some people are getting confused. Okay, so welcome back. And if you want to contribute to the show, for anyone listening today, if you hear a speaker that you like and you want to drop a PayPal donation in, please go ahead, paypal.me/A Shot Glass of Recovery. Any little bit helps to keep the show going and funded, and we appreciate your support. A Vision for You, episode 53, still in A Vision for You, and we are on page 158. All right, so we're going to start at That Was in June 1935 on page 158, A Vision for You. That was in June 1935. He never drank again. And we were talking about the guy who was in the hospital, and then he got out, and with the help of AA, he was staying sober. I believe he ran for office and then he lost and he didn't get drunk, which probably for him was a miracle in itself. And he stayed sober. So he never drank again. He too has become a respected and useful member of his community. He has helped other men recover and is a power in the church from which he was long absent. So you see, there were 3 alcoholics in that town who now felt they had to give to others what they had found or be sunk. The 12th step. After several failures to find others, a 4th turned up. He came through an acquaintance who had heard the good news. He proved to be a devil-may-care young fellow whose parents could not make out whether he wanted to stop drinking or not. They were deeply religious people, much shocked by their son's refusal to have anything to do with the church. He suffered horribly from his sprees, but it seemed as if nothing could be done for him. He consented, however, to go to the hospital, where he occupied the very room recently vacated by the lawyer. That was number 3, AA number 3. Guess what? He had 3 visitors. After a bit, he said, "The way you fellows put this spiritual stuff makes sense. I'm ready to do business. I guess the old folks were right after all." And that talks about our 3rd tradition, the desire to stop drinking is what qualifies you for membership in Alcoholics Anonymous. Individual groups go by their 4th tradition and have their own set of governance, group conscience, but you have to have a desire to stop drinking to participate in Alcoholics Anonymous. So he had found that. And here we see the 3 people who were once hopeless and could not stay sober, but with the spiritual toolkit, they're not only staying sober, but they're going out and helping future recovered alcoholics. So 1 more was added to the fellowship. All this time, our friend of the hotel lobby incident remained in that town. And we know because from last week we discovered the person in the lobby was our founder, one of our 2 founders, Bill Wilson, Bill W. And he's visiting on business in Akron, Ohio, and the business deal goes south. And he stands in that desolate lobby, and at one end is laughter and gaiety coming from the hotel bar, and at the other end is the church directory and a phone. And a miracle happened, and he turned left instead of right and walked down and picked up that phone and called and said, "Are there any drunks in this town? Because I need to talk to one and see if I can help somebody out to get out of myself." And that's how he met our other co-founder, Dr. Bob. So he was there 3 months. He now returned home. So he's going back to New York City, leaving behind his first acquaintance, the doctor, the lawyer, and the devil-may-care chap. These men had found something brand new in life. Though they knew they must help other alcoholics if they would remain sober, that motive became secondary. It was transcended by the happiness they found in giving themselves for others. They shared their homes, their slender resources, and gladly devoted their spare hours to fellow sufferers. They were willing by day or night to place a new man in the hospital and visit him afterward. They grew in numbers. They experienced a few distressing failures. But in those cases, they made an effort to bring the man's family into a spiritual way of living, thus relieving much worry and suffering. And for those of you who stuck around after our morning meeting today, we had a training session to teach people how to do service on Zoom at our Solution Seekers home group. And I told a story about someone I knew in Alcoholics Anonymous. We were talking about, don't decide for your sponsor that you're a burden and that, you shouldn't call them. Let the sponsor decide. And somebody said, you never know, I might need that phone call. I might need that help. And I told the story about a person who was standing on the edge of a bridge, and they weren't there for the view. They weren't there for the scenery. They were there thinking about the end. And their phone rang, and out of their pocket, they looked at their cell phone, and it was a sponsee. And they took the call, and they stepped back from the bridge. And after the phone call, they went home. And I do believe that's a powerful story to tell. Because here's an example of service saving your life. Doing something for others in that act of selflessness. Maybe this person thought it's my final act, but something made them change their mind. And perhaps it was that person reaching out in that very moment. And I think that's a God shot. I call those divine moments. Like this whole situation of the hotel lobby incident and how he then connects with the town drunk, Dr. Bob, who everyone thought was hopeless. And he was like, who the heck are you to talk to me of God? I'm a churchgoer. You're like a stockbroker. What do you know about religion? And yet through discussion, they find common ground and they relate to each other and they get well. And then they carry this message to another one and then another one. That's a divine moment too. This whole program is just full of grace. So we're going to pause right there, thus relieving much worry and suffering. Does anyone want to comment on some of the things that we've read? And I can go back and show you back on the page if you need me to. Stacy, come on in, please.
I want to comment. Well, see, that's why they say they shared their homes. Their snickers.
Stacy's done sharing now. Next. There's a joke there, people. It's an inside joke. Maybe we'll tell you someday.
I love the fact they say all this time our friend of the hotel lobby incident remained in that town. And I love the fact that they say that helping people becomes secondary. Helping people for yourself becomes secondary. So you can stay sober, becomes secondary. Just because you're going through something really hard. I love what Lisa just said about the sponsor. Just because you're going through something hard, I might be staring at the wall. The phone rings. I'm staring at the wall with the deepest, darkest thoughts I could ever think. And the phone rings. And you pick up the phone. And it's a sponsee. And she don't have to be like, hey, Stacy, doing a Toyota dance. All she has to do is say, hello, Stacy, here I am today, how are you? And we'll talk about what went on in her day. We'll talk about what went on in my day. Maybe you might read something to get us off our minds. Something, anything to get the person out of themselves. Just like Lisa said, get them out of themselves. So thanks for allowing me to share that.
Thank you, Stacy. Are you going to tell a story about how you keep moving people in? That's why she was excited.
That hurts. That really hurts. That hurts.
She's like, oh, I see myself in the book. Justification. You sweet devil, you. Kelly, come on in.
There we go. Sorry about that. Thank you, everyone. Hi, Kelly Alcoholic. I was there this morning when story was mentioned, Lisa, and I very much appreciate it. It stayed with me all day today. And I had a busy morning, and got to my business meeting at my in-person meeting not quite late, a little late. And there were some things, as business meetings can do, things got heated. And I right away was like, oh, I should talk to my sponsor about this. Oh, but my sponsor's going through some difficulties right now. Oh, but Lisa said sometimes it's a good idea to reach out. Oh, but it's really, really a tricky time. So I texted my sponsor. Tomorrow, I'm having a bit of a time. I'm 11 months today, which is awesome. Today is also the day 10 years ago that my partner's mom passed away, and we're having a barbecue tomorrow, and there will be a lot of wine here, and some sadness and some tears. And so I reached out to my sponsor and I let her know that I have leaned into a friend who is going to come over and sit with me, because I believe it's going to be a tricky day for me. It's been a little tricky lately. Things are coming up as I'm closing into my 1 year, and I'm just leaning into the program, and I appreciate that advice this morning. And then there again, it is in the book, just like how people helping people, and that's all it is. And I even said to my sponsor, when you have time, or if you just want to listen to something different, I'll tell you about this morning, because, business meetings are always fun to listen about. But yeah, but no, I appreciate that. And I didn't feel awkward or anything. Well, of course I felt awkward, but I still reached out anyway. And then I reached out to other people in the program who physically I know could be there for me tomorrow, which is awesome. Thank you.
That's nice. I do feel like this is the Toronto group, but we are worldwide, international, but it's so nice to have that connection. So we try also to hook people up who are in the same area, right? And we have a lot of folks from the States, and if we can put people in touch with the same resident in the same state, that's kind of cool, because there's something nice about getting together in the physical. But if your sponsor can't answer, I might be able to answer. So he can also call me as well. Derek, come on in.
Derek Alcoholic, what up, my people? What up, y'all? Wi-Fi. Yeah, I finally remembered that study was going on at 5 o'clock here this time. So I was like, yes, let me jump in. Yeah, good time. What I love about hearing these stories is just the tenacity, and these men were going to any lengths to stay sober, and I think that's the biggest thing that screams out at me. And not just that, but also how well informed they were about themselves as alcoholics and about the illness of alcoholism. And the reason I say that is because that's when I'm in meetings, when I'm working with others, when I'm working with my sponsor, that's where my attention is, for me to become more informed about, who I am as an alcoholic and the illness, the disease we all have, this fatal illness that we have, because that's what these men did. It wasn't like they had any magic potion as we read in, working with others. They just really were informed about themselves, like their drinking careers. And they were really informed about the illness, and they had the solution as well. So, and I say that because Jack Alexander, and I love this story. So y'all probably hear it more than once from me, but Jack Alexander, writer for the Saturday Evening Post, heard about Alcoholics Anonymous, and he heard that it was a bunch of drunks getting together. And he said, no way. No way. They're taking advantage of these people. I know they're taking their money. They're having these drunks in there stand on their heads and do all kind of crazy stuff. I'm gonna go bust them. And that's what Jack Alexander did. He exploded like Ponzi schemes back in the day, anything like pyramid schemes or anything like that. He was the buster. He exposed them and put them on national blast. And he went to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous to debunk Alcoholics Anonymous. And I don't know what message he heard. I don't know who shared in that meeting. I don't know who carried the message. But after he left that meeting, he wrote an article that drove, 6,000 people into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. So the message he heard was so powerful and so touching and so moving that a non-alcoholic wanted what these men had. And that's what I feel like I'm charged with. And that's why I love reading this section, the vision for you, because he's saying that you can be by yourself, just alone. But if you have the tenacity and you are informed about yourself and you have the solution, you too can start from 2 to 3 and beyond. Thanks for letting me share.
I wanted to make Kelly feel good, so I pretended not to be able to find my unmute button there. Just kidding. I really couldn't find it. Thank you so much, Derek. You just reminded me too, if you want to read what Derek was just talking about, I will drop that link in the chat. It's from aa.org and it's called The Story Behind Jack Alexander's Article. So that's a great little piece for you to read as well. So let me just drop that in the chat. Geez, I need a tech host for these things. Trying to multitask. I'm not very good at it. So in that article, the story begins when the owner of the Saturday Evening Post, Judge Curtis Bach, learned of AA from two friends. He wanted the Post to tell the story of the organization. He called upon a well-known journalist, Jack Alexander, to do so. And then you've heard what Derek said, so I won't go too deeply into the rest of the article, but it is a good read. So aa.org, man, it's a wealth of information. Make sure you check it out. Brenda, come on in.
Hi, Brenda, alcoholic. Yeah, it's pretty amazing how people give freely of their time. And when you're new coming into the rooms, like I was, and getting a sponsor, I was blown away that my first interaction with my sponsor was like an hour and a half of her time. She didn't know me. We spent an hour and a half talking, going over things. And then she gave me suggestions and she said, listen, I need you to reach out and get some sober support because there'll be times when you won't be able to reach me. I'm working, I have a life. And I was like, oh my goodness. But I had written down numbers because people were freely putting their numbers in the chat of the meetings. So I did. I reached out. She gave me a script. They responded right away. I was blown away. But she also told me to reach out to 2 people each day. Just send a text to them, how they're doing, whatever. I was like, oh my goodness, like, how am I going to do that? And I did. And, most responded. But there was one day I texted someone, just checking in to say hi, see how your day's going. And they were having a terrible day. And we ended up texting back and forth for like about 10 minutes. And then I really got it right then that, you know what, the people that are working the program know how it works because other people shared it with them. And what they say is true because when you're new coming in, you're kind of like, people, do they really want me texting them, bothering sort of thing? And I'll admit I was desperate. So I did it and I was blown away that it really works because people do want to give away what was given to them. So I'm so grateful for those tips and suggestions. And I look forward to the day that I can, be a sponsor and sponsor people the way my sponsor sponsors me. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. And for those of you who are going to catch up with us, I said 158, but we're now at the bottom of page 159. And who did I see was next with their hand up? Yvonne, come on in.
Yes. Hello, good evening, good day. I think it's good night for me. I'm Yvonne Alcoholic. I hope you can hear me. My internet is crappy. Thank you so much, Lisa. I had a question. I wanted to know who the devil may care chap was. If you could tell me, if you know. Thank you.
You're welcome. I don't know the name. That would be something that I would have to research and look up. So, game on. Who's going to find out first? If you find out before the end of this meeting, you get a bonus. I don't know what it is yet, but there'll be a bonus, something extra in your stocking. That's a good question. So who is the devil may care chap? You looking for a date or do you like the sound of that guy, don't you? I can tell I know your type. The devil may care chap. I like to make Yvonne laugh. All right, so no more hands up. So we're going to continue reading. I'll go back to doing a little screen share for you. And we'll pause again in a few more paragraphs. Okay. A year and 6 months later, these 3 had succeeded with 7 more. So think of that. A year and 6 months later. And now think about how Alcoholics Anonymous has exploded to millions of people. Seeing much of each other, scarce an evening passed that someone's home did not shelter a little gathering of men and women, happy in their release and constantly thinking of how they might present their discovery to some newcomer. In addition to these casual get-togethers, it became customary to set apart one night a week for a meeting to be attended by anyone or everyone interested in a spiritual way of life. Aside from fellowship and sociability, the prime object, here's a tip, don't drink bubbly soda water when you're trying to, host a podcast. I'm going to stop drinking that now because it keeps making me pause and belch. I don't even know where I was. Oh, aside from fellowship and sociability, the prime object was to provide a time and place where new people might bring their problems. Sound familiar? Outsiders became interested. One man and his wife placed their large home at the disposal of this strangely assorted crowd. This couple has since become so fascinated that they have dedicated their home to the work. Many a distracted wife has visited this house to find loving and understanding companionship among women who knew her problem. Sounds like the birth of Al-Anon to me. To hear from the lips of their husbands what had happened to them, to be advised how her own wayward mate might be hospitalized and then approached when next he stumbled. Many a man, yet dazed from his hospital experience, has stepped over the threshold of that home into freedom. Many an alcoholic who entered there came away with an answer. He succumbed to that gay crowd inside. Not that kind of succumbing to that gay crowd. Yes, joyous laughter. That's what they mean by that. Who laughed at their own misfortunes and understood his. How many times have we talked about that, right? In a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, where we are shocked at the things that people say and share, the vulnerability, the openness, the honesty. And then people laugh at themselves. Like we always love the story where Trisha talks about how she wet the bed. You know, that's a good one. That's a classic. But you get a non-alcoholic in the room on an open speaker meeting night and they're like, they're so shocked. They would never admit such things. But we've healed, you know, we've grown up in Alcoholics Anonymous. So it's not that big a deal for us to share those things that led us to these doors. Impressed by those who visited him at the hospital, he capitulated entirely when, later, in an upper room of this house, he heard the story of some man whose experience closely tallied with his own. The expression on the faces of the women, that indefinable something in the eyes of the men, the stimulating and electric atmosphere of the place, conspired to let him know that here was a haven at last. And I've often heard Alcoholics Anonymous referred to as the last house on the block for many. It's our last opportunity. It's the last door that hasn't been slammed in our face and locked. It's the one that remains open, no matter our transgressions. The very practical approach to his problems, the absence of intolerance of any kind, the informality, the genuine democracy, the uncanny understanding which these people had were irresistible. He and his wife would leave elated by the thought of what they could now do for some stricken acquaintance and his family. They knew they had a host of new friends. It seemed they had known these strangers always. They had seen miracles, and one was to come to them. They had visioned the great reality, their loving and all-powerful Creator. I'm going to pause there because I'm pretty sure a lot of you will have comments about that. Yes, Brian, come on in.
There's sort of two realities. One is I'm Brian, I'm an alcoholic. And then sort of reading through the different passages, we're accepting that we have a disease. We're probably the only disease that doesn't have any sympathy. We're in my mind, you know, and I can only talk about, you know, sort of from my experience, it is willpower. Yeah, if you love your kids enough, you'll give up drinking. If you love your wife, you'll give up drinking. And I think we're the, you know, and this is where the strength of AA comes in, is that we understand I personally, I think it's willpower, but it's more. I want to give up drinking, but you know, it's more than just willpower. and this is where I call in the mornings because, I find it to be very helpful.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you so much. I don't know if you've been with us for the whole time, but we do talk a lot about willpower failing us. And we also talk about in the beginning in page 22, and we talk about how, there is judgment out there. And this is one of the few diseases where people are maybe tolerant and forgiving because they think that, right? It's that illusion from people who have not suffered like we've suffered. And they think, well, if they did this, or if they really loved that girl, I would think that he would quit for her, So yeah, it's, I think they call it just a lack of misunderstanding. You get to a point when working with your sponsor where you don't need that acceptance. You just have learned something of self-reliance, but also God-reliance, because it's that willpower that does fail us every time. So thank you for that. Stacy.
Hi, I'm Stacey. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you so much for the shares and thank you for having the meeting, Lisa. The importance of remembering that we have to, when we take alcohol away, we have to replace it with something. And that's what it says in my book. It said we have to replace it with something. And the fellowship that we have here, that we have the fellowship here. And is truly a fellowship of love because I don't know about you, but I would not have walked it out of that hospital thinking, well, let me see if I can help another alcoholic. That is not the thoughts that come into my head. I don't have a heart like that. Without the power, without the power that they talk about in Alcoholics Anonymous. And Brian, thank you for bringing up willpower. But the thing of the matter is that my willpower never worked. I worked hard at it. I banged it and I did the best that I could. I remember I was in the Army. And the Army told me I could do anything. But this was something that was unconquerable. Unconquerable. The thing I love about what they talk about in Alcoholics Anonymous is that it says we have to replace it with something. And we need to replace it with the fellowship. We need each other. I was just talking about the 8th step with another sponsor we went through. I'm sorry, the 8th tradition. And we were talking about how people in Alcoholics Anonymous and outside Alcoholics Anonymous, the professionalism that they do, as long as they don't mention us, thank God for them helping other alcoholics. You know, the thing is, I remember speaking at a school and I asked my sponsor, could I do that? She said, yeah, as long as you don't mention Alcoholics Anonymous, you can do that. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to turn this into some kind of professionalism class because you don't have that kind of degree here. AA is for people who have actual humility. You know, my willpower never worked. I had to have God's power. I had to to give it over to him. And suddenly it seemed like suddenly I was done. Suddenly, suddenly it seems like I was ready to give it up. We do those things here in Alcoholics Anonymous. We do go to a mighty long length to help others. And it's something in here that I had never tried was to reach out and help another alcoholic. I reach out and help another person. I was busy thinking about myself. So thanks guys for allowing me to share. And thanks to everybody who shared.
Thank you, Stacy. Ernie G. And I got to give kudos to Brenda. Brenda, who's like just over 100 days sober. She's the one who put it in the chat first. But Stacy, if you have an article and you want to throw it in there, the chat is open. So Ernie G was the Devil May Care chap, AA number 4. And as we mentioned, talking a little bit about willpower, I just looked up a couple pages for you guys. On page 22, and there is a solution. It says, what has become of the common sense and willpower that he still sometimes displays with respect to other matters? So people who have this misunderstanding about alcoholism, they're applying that same willpower and they're thinking, why can't they just apply that willpower? Because it's a disease. So they haven't read or they haven't come to know what we've come to know. And I didn't know this until I got here and somebody taught me. And I read it in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, was that it's an illness, right? I have a phenomena of craving that is triggered after I take the first drink. But I don't know that, so I keep taking the first drink and then banging my hands on the bar and my head on the bar and bumping into walls and falling down and puking all over myself and wondering, what is wrong with me? Oh, I have an illness. There is a solution, page 24. At a certain point in the drinking of every alcoholic, he passes into a state where the most powerful desire to stop drinking is of absolutely no avail. Doesn't matter how much willpower you have doing other things. It will fail you because it's human aid. It's our humanity, our human aid that's going to fail us. I love how these great discussions happen here. And Stacey, you mentioned about how the transformation where we go from being selfish, self-centered, self-seeking, we wouldn't, the building is burning. I'm pushing you out of the way. I'm getting out first. I'm just saying. That is my first thought. That is my very nature. I will mow you down to get to safety. I was talking to a sponsee of mine today where I talked about my first thought is usually negative. It's the wrong thought. But thankfully, thank God, and thank this program, and thank good sponsorship, the one who answered my call many times when I was frustrated because self was battling with what was right, and I was taught the next thought. What would God have me do? What would God have me be? Where would God have me go? What's the next right thing? How can I show up for someone else today? And here's my embarrassing moment of humility. Many of you know in the meeting who know me that my wife is waiting for her grandmother to pass. So she's in palliative care. And this is my wife's first real big person that she's about to lose in life, the first big one for her. And so it's hard. And my vacation started Friday morning. And my wife said, "Would you please stay home? We don't know when it's going to happen. Could happen today, could happen 5 days from now." And you want to know what my first thought was? No. No, I don't want to. I want to go on vacation. I live to get out of the city of Toronto. I cannot wait to get to trees and water and nature. And that's the God's honest truth. Does that make me a horrible person? Don't shake your head, yes. You might think that. But my second thought is, thank God I didn't say that out loud. Although I then tell myself and tell her that afterwards, and she thanks me. Doesn't need to thank me, because the right choice is to say, "Sure, hon, no problem. I'll do that." And I've done that, and I've stayed, and it's the right thing to do. And guess what? I feel way better about that choice than if I had gone. Imagine if I hadn't have gone. Well, I wouldn't be married. Still. Kelly, come on in.
Hello again, Kelly. Still alcoholic. Going back to people who just want you to have your willpower. I was reflecting this morning at my in-person big book meeting because we're earlier in the book, actually. So I think we're on like page 24 and to 29. So it's just talking about starting out. And I've been reflecting a lot on this past 11 months, and especially the 6 months before. So probably a month before I walked into the rooms, I kept looking at myself in the mirror saying, "You have a problem. You got to do something. You've got to stop this now. You're an alcoholic." I kept telling myself that. And the reasons why sorry, excuse me for a second, didn't come in were a couple of reasons. And one of them was because I didn't have a belief in a higher power and I didn't want to hear the word God. The other reason was that I didn't want a friend of mine who was in the program and has just received 7 years of sobriety to know I was coming in the program, because I treated that person who sat beside me while I shared this morning horribly, because they couldn't get their act together, because they couldn't get their willpower to get themselves sober, and that it's not a disease. Stop saying that you're sick. And I didn't want that person to know that I was just like them. And I was just like them then. Yes, alcohol hadn't taken over my life, but I've had an alcoholic mind all my life. This I know now. And I'm grateful to have that experience, because going forward when I will be I doing my eighth and ninth. Yes. I know that I'm not going to receive the forgiveness immediately or at all, maybe, because it's not understood by everybody the way I was acting. You know, it was just like the way my friend was acting. And I hated her for that. I hated her during those years. And we've since, talked about that. And I talk about that day a lot because it actually was the person I turned to get me to my first meeting. And someone told me, just call her. And I did say for a couple of weeks, don't let her know, don't let her know, don't let her know. And then I called her and I went to my first meeting. So I'm grateful to know both sides of that because it's hard. It is so hard for people to understand what it's about. There's no willpower. That will not be done. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Okay, over to Derek.
Derek, alcoholic. One thing I had to realize about alcoholism is that it is an illness. I know it's hard to contemplate that. And it was really tough for me to get that in my mind because I always just connected it with the drink, with alcohol. And it was it was a liquid, but that's the thing, a lot of you'll hear in the rooms that, alcohol, have a good forgetter. My alcoholism is I have a forgetter. And one of the most crucial things I will forget about this illness is it's fatal. I'll say all day, oh, I have an illness. I have an illness. It's a full blown medical illness, but I will forget that it's fatal. You know, I have a fatal progressive illness. It never gets better. It always gets worse. Even right now, I've been through the 12-step process. I've had a spiritual awakening. I'm carrying the message. I sponsor people. I practice the principles in all my affairs. Even while I'm doing that, it's getting worse. And another look at it I'll share is to have a fatal illness. Think about a fatal illness, right? We'll say stage 4 cancer. Tell a person with stage 4 cancer, use your willpower. You can get through this. Tell a person with terminal AIDS, use your willpower. You'll come out of it. You can come out of it. Come on, willpower your way through this. Only a power beyond this earth, beyond human aid, can work a miracle like that. That's why I keep that close relationship with God, because I know that of my own devices, my willpower, when it came to alcohol, always had an expiration date. And I never knew when that willpower was going to expire, when somebody slid a drink in front of me, when that obsession to drink came over me, you know? So I had to keep in the forefront of my mind. Yeah, Derek, you got an illness, but that illness you have, fatal. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you for coming in. And Tiffany, come on in.
The part that really stood out to me is like the very practical approach to his problem was the absence of intolerance of any kind and informality, the general democracy, but really being with a group of people where you're not hiding. I spent a lot of time in my alcoholism trying to make it look like I was fine. The house was good, the kids were good, dinner was on the table, the car, like I got the job. I look good. I mean, if you were looking from the outside in, Tiffany's got it together. I was totally falling apart. I was whoever you wanted me to be. No one actually knew my true, real thoughts because I never shared them with anybody. And then I was hospitalized. I went to rehab. And then suddenly all my flaws are out on the table with these people. I mean, here I am. I'm stuck in this same place with you. And for the first time in a long time, it was just, that's it. This is me. I have all these problems. No one judged you. No one said anything. Actually, we were all healing each other and we didn't know it, despite the fact that there were doctors and counselors and all of those things around. But I'm a slow learner. So when I got out of rehab, I kept on with the therapist and I kept seeing, man, I really missed that. I wish I had this place where I could go like that, where, people don't judge you. And she kept saying, AA, have you tried AA? I mean, she kept telling me over and over again. And I was like, yeah, but that's not really for me. She's like, well, why don't you try some, And I started trying some meetings and I found solution seekers. I tried a lot of online meetings and you're kind of rolling the dice there. But I found solution seekers and every day I didn't talk for like 3 months when I came, but for every day I would still come there every day and just listen. And it was people talking about solution, people being their exact selves, what their problems are. And I think that's something that I was missing my whole life. And I, again, apparently I'm a slow learner. So it took me a while to speak up, but now it's a place that I look forward to going every day. Sometimes I fixed up in the morning before I go to work. And then sometimes I didn't brush my hair today, but I'm going to go to that meeting. I can be who I am and no one's judging me. It's a safe place to be. And I think that's what's attractive. And I think that's what they're saying, that energy that they were just drawn to, that suddenly you can let down all your defensive mechanisms. That's all.
Thank you so much. Newcomer, and she shared on the topic. Like, what the hell? Good for you. And shared honestly. And I think you hit the nail on the head, right? In this house, this is the one place where people do understand us because they are us. We're all different. We come from all walks of life, colors, creeds, backgrounds, whatever. But yet we all have the same illness. We all have the same disease. And Stacy, you took the words right out of my mouth. Just tell people who are listening what you just put in the chat, because I was going to say the same thing, and then you put it in the chat.
Just real quick, look how long it took the world to catch up. Almost 20 years. The American Medical Association declared that we had an illness in 1956. Our book was published in 1939. So it took all that time for the world to say, yes, we haven't, they are ill. They have a fatal disease. And if it's not treated, like Derek said, we can die from it. When I came in here, I was playing. I thought that you couldn't die from alcoholism. You just drink, 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 drink. Well, you know what? You'll end up if you don't die from it, it's even worse. You're sitting in a wheelchair with your mind just gone. It's melted. That's even worse. We really do. We really do have to treat this disease, and we cannot treat it. Unfortunately, we cannot treat it like that. We can't treat it with willpower. It won't work. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do believe they also talk in the book about the right use of the will, and it's aligning your thoughts with God's, right? That's the right use of the will. And for me too, the right use of the will was becoming willing. That's the right use of my will, of my willpower. Turn that willpower into willingness. Am I willing to follow directions? Do I have an honest desire to get and stay sober? And then once I'm here and I get sober, the next honest desire and test of willingness is, do I have a desire to grow? Am I going to grow in emotional sobriety, or am I going to sit on my throne or my high horse and say, I have 27 years of sobriety. Look at me. I know everything. I don't need any more learning. Thank you very much. Or am I going to continue to grow? That's where I want to be. All right. Geez, we've got 10 minutes left. I'll just read a little bit more. Now, this house will hardly accommodate its weekly visitors, for they number 60 or 80 as a rule. Alcoholics are being attracted from far and near, from surrounding towns. Families drive long distances to be present. A community 30 miles away has 15 fellows of Alcoholics Anonymous. Being a large place, we think that someday its fellowship will number many hundreds. Now, that was written in 1939. But life among Alcoholics Anonymous is more than attending gatherings and visiting hospitals, cleaning up old scrapes, helping to settle family differences, explaining the disinherited son to his irate parents, lending money and securing jobs for each other when justified. These are everyday occurrences. No one is too discredited or has sunk too low to be welcomed cordially. If he means business. Those are some great reminders, right? Right after, hey, We can lend money and help secure jobs for each other when justified. Dash, these are everyday occurrences, and dash if he means business. Social distinctions, petty rivalries and jealousies, these are laughed out of countenance. Being wrecked in the same vessel, being restored and united under one God, with hearts and minds attuned to the welfare of others, the things which matter so much to some people no longer signify much to them. How could they? You know, we talk about being rocketed into the fourth dimension, and for the longest time, I never really understood what that is. But for me, that's a way of living spiritually. I live on a different plane today. And beyond my wildest dreams, a life beyond my wildest dreams were sex, drugs, and rock and roll, money and women. Those were my wild dreams. That's it, right? I didn't have a very great imagination when it came to that. And I've been rocketed beyond that. What's beyond that? I can live life on life's terms today. You know, I can have a normal, peaceful existence and be overjoyed with that normal, peaceful existence. You know, I can be a worker amongst workers. I can be an average human being. I don't need to be the rock star. I can just be me. And that's okay. And that's the next level for me. Life beyond my wildest dreams. And we're going to pause there. So how could they? Next time, we'll pick up at the very bottom of page 161. Under only slightly different conditions, the same thing is taking place in many Eastern cities. So that's where we'll pick up next time. All right, that ends the sharing portion of our meeting. Thanks to everybody for joining me today on a shot glass of recovery. We'll close with the prayer. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Keep coming back. You're worth it. You're worth it. You work it. You're worth it. And thank you so much for joining us on the Big Book Study. We'll see you again soon, perhaps tomorrow at 7 a.m.
Shot glass of recovery.